Good morning and welcome to all for this our ninth session of Islamic Architectural Heritage Legacy course. And I humbly request to Nasri Madam, please start our today's session.
Good morning, everybody. Today will be actually the 10th session, what I'm going to show. Because tomorrow's session we have arranged for one of the famous architect from Middle East. He will be projecting his works on Islamic architectural styles, what he has used in his contemporary buildings. So ninth session we will be sending you as a recording very soon. And today I'm going to present the 10th session. So I'll just share my screen. You can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So welcome to the Islamic Architectural Legacy in the Lands of Islam. So today's session will be revival and modern architectural styles in Islamic lands. So let's understand a little bit of historical context on colonial period in the Middle East. So throughout the 18th, 19th and early 20th century, European powers invaded and colonized large portions of Islamic world, reshaping both the physical boundaries of these territories and also reshaping their structures of authority. So the Napoleon's Egypt expedition in 1798 was particularly important in the initial period of European conquest and colonialism. At this time, much of the Mediterranean world, which had been part of the Ottoman Empire, including Egypt, parts of Syria, Algiers, became ruled by European powers. So Algiers was captured by French from Ottomans in 1832. And in India, the 18th century was a period in which the British consolidated power by way of East India Company, which eventually led to direct colonial rule in 1858. And in Qajar, Iran, there was no colonial intercession, but it was still largely regulated through Western interventions. So here in this period, we can see two trends in terms of art and historical study. Europe's and Americas discovered the Islamic art and its impact in the 19th and 20th centuries in what it came to be as known as Orientalist art. So this is also a period when the first books of Islamic art and museum collections are found. So in the arts of the Islamic world, there was an integration of European ideas and techniques. So more broadly, the increase in globalization and the subversion of Islamic lands under Western hegemony led to the growth of nationalism and revivalism. So here we will try to understand some of the examples with revival and modern architectural styles in Islamic lands. A new Ottoman style was adopted in this particular famous mosque of Muhammad Ali in Cairo. So he was the founder of modern Egypt, who was an Ottoman officer originally from Greece. So the mosque in Cairo was commissioned by Muhammad Ali Pasha between 1830 to 1848. So there were many smaller Ottoman-style mosques in Cairo, built by former viziers and pashas. Muhammad Ali, by contrast, adopted an unprecedented imperial plan type that in the Ottoman period was only used by the ruling sultans. So we had understood about this in our last class that Ottomans they had a hierarchy of construction. The monumental kind of construction was going only by the sultans and the elites. And then they had a lot of hierarchies within the royal family while they are constructing the buildings. But here, as a vassal of the Ottoman, he was the vassal of the Ottomans. He boldly appropriated an Ottoman symbol of imperial rulership. So even citing his monument, mosque on the citadel's hilltop. So earlier it was reserved only for the main sultan. The central dome, surrounded by 4 half domes, were traditionally reserved only for Ottoman sultanic mosques. So likewise, even the lead covering of the domical superstructure was exclusively used in prestigious monuments of the ruling elite. So here, the architect who built the mosque was French, and revealing how intricately interconnected the global architectural styles that became very prevalent in this 19th century. And here it has 4 domes, like what we saw in the Shahzade Mehmed Mosque in 1540s, which was built by Mimar Sinan in Istanbul. So mosques with this type of imperial plan type also appeared from the mid-17th century onwards. So imperial plan means something like they had a diplomatic initiative. It was not only meant for main sultan. So here, this appeared in somewhere in mid-17th century. This kind of imperial plan started, not only here, but also in North Africa and in other Ottoman territories that gained relative independence as vassals. So here, Al-Rifai Mosque is an example for another revivalist style. So present in 19th century, Cairene Mosque architecture. Cairene Mosque architecture means this is located in Cairo, so it's Cairene Mosque architecture. So it is, we can say that it is a neo-Mamluk style. So revival means they are revivalist style means they are revivaling the old style of that particular area. So that is earlier they had Mamluk style, right? So here this Al-Rifai, again they revived that neo-Mamluk style here. So the Al-Rifai Mosque was built across the Sultan Hassan complex and became a burial place for important individuals, including the Shah of Iran, Muhammad Riza Pahlavi, and King Farooq of Egypt. It is an example of a monument in a revivalist style. So once again, built by European architect, the Hungarian Jewish architect, Max Herz Pasha. So here in the capital of the Ottoman Empire, that is in Istanbul, Ottoman sultans began to commission Europeanizing their styles of architecture. So here you can see this is a Dolmabahce Palace, which is in Istanbul. So these rulers abandoned the Topkapi Palace, considering it to be old-fashioned, and they began to build modern European style of palaces. So some of the impetus for this change was a desire to demonstrate an appreciation of Western values, which might better position them in even diplomacy with European powers. The Topkapi Palace was abandoned for this Dolmabahce Palace along the Bosphorus waterfront in the mid-19th century. So here you can see it is on the waterfront of this Bosphorus. So this you can call it as a neoclassical building with classical temple fronts and adorned with Baroque-like ornaments. Baroque means it's related to European kind of architecture. So unlike the old palaces, which comprised separate pavilions, courtyards, and gardens, this particular palace is a unified horizontal building with two wings on both the sides of more monumental central block at the center. So it was built for Sultan Abdul Nasir I by the native Armenian court architect. Two architects actually. One is Garabet Balyan and Nigo Nigogayas Balyan, who were educated in Paris. Significantly, these architects did not slavishly imitate the neoclassical style, but rather mixed it with decorative elements that could give more appearance like a Eastern kind of patterns. So here, this is a royal pavilion at Britain in England. So in England, the Prince Regent George of Wales commissioned a neo-Mughal Indian style. So that is a Mughal style, Indian style building to function as a hunting pavilion. So this pavilion was designed by John Nash, one of the foremost British architects of Regency and Georgian eras. So Georgian eras means usually it is 17th, 18th centuries. Here, Islamic style architecture in Europe was used more for entertainment buildings like hunting pavilions. If you take an example of Alhambra, it became a model for theaters and cinemas, etc. So also in United States, they were using the Islamic styles for these kind of entertainment buildings. But a state building would hardly employ Islamic architectural styles. Instead, Gothic or classical Greek or even Roman style was preferably used in official public monuments. So in the Britain pavilions, this one we can call it as eclectic style. Eclectic style means it's a style from different periods. So they combine maybe 2 or 3 styles and then they make this style. So this could be called as eclectic style. So there is a clear association of Islamic style with the frivolous architecture of pleasure here. So aligning with Orientalist stereotypes of the period. So Orientalist stereotypes means they are the people who are studying towards the history, languages, cultures, architectural detailing of all these Eastern side. So they're getting knowledge of those. So those are called Orientalist kind of stereotypes. So these kind of eclectic styles of buildings were more aligning towards this Orientalist stereotypes. So the interior of John Nash's Royal Pavilion here, exterior was in Indo-Islamic style, but interior you can see there is a mix, a combination of Mughal, Islamic, and also Chinese decorative motifs, which exemplifying the exoticism that differed from the classicism of the Regency style. So exoticism means they are creating something like a striking and attractive kind of patterns in the interiors through this eclecticism. So classicism and Regency style means it is differing. So this kind of eclecticism is differing from classicism and Regency style. That means classicism means it's Greek or Roman styles. So in the Regency period means it's during the maybe after Napoleon period. So this is another instance of Islamic architecture being appropriated in the West. This is a cigarette factory in Potsdam, Germany, emulated the Neo-Mamluk style. So here this style we can call it as Neo-Mamluk style. So as in the case of the Pleasure Palace in Britain, what we just saw now, Islamic architecture has been deployed here for a building without an official or maybe serious in character. So smoking being a pleasurable pastime, here the architect Martin Hamitz designed the factory in the manner of a monumental domed mosque. So with a glass dome and also a tall minaret-like chimney. And also he used a lot of smaller turrets like this with conical tops. So this recalls Ottoman's minarets as well as Gothic spires. So this is a Beylerbeyi Palace in Ottomans again. A similar eclecticism exemplifies the other late Ottoman palaces in Istanbul. In addition to the Dolmabahce Palace, several royal gardens, pavilions were built along the Bosphorus which replaced former Ottoman structures that were deemed old-fashioned and also lacking in monumentality. So from the outside, this Beylerbeyi Palace along the Asian shore of the Bosphorus appears to be an interpretation of European classicizing architecture, with round arches and classical with marble columns. But its interiors, when you see here, is very colorfully decorated in a neo-Islamic idiom, commissioned by Sultan Abdul Aziz. The Armenian court architect of this summer palace was Sarkis Balyan, who designed it in the Second Empire style. So the painted designs seem to be taken from Owen Jones' publications on the Alhambra. Hence, the Ottoman ornaments were no longer used exclusively here. In this instance, they are electrically mixed with the Moresque style. So Moresque style means they are the Muslim style from Nasrid dynasty. So now from the eclecticism of the 19th century, let us now move to the modernism of the 20th century, and also we will look into postmodernism. So interestingly here, Le Corbusier was another among artists and architects inspired by Islamic architecture. He traveled to Istanbul in 1911 as a young man, and his illustrated travel log with notes and a lot of sketches has been published. So this is his publication where we can see his illustrations of Ottoman Empire. So Le Corbusier detected modern features in Ottoman architecture, which fascinated and inspired him. So here, Le Corbusier recorded his travel notes with sketchy drawings, such as these drawings of Rustam Pasha Mosque in Istanbul, which was built again by Mimar Sinan in 15th century. So Le Corbusier condensed the architectural forms to their geometric essence, rather than focusing on their ornament like some 19th century Orientalists did. So that means he's concentrating on the overall building's geometry, its cubic formation or maybe cylindrical, so something like that. See, he's not concentrating on individual detailing, intricate detailing or the Islamic elements and all. But the Orientalists, they are concentrating on these kind of detailing. So Le Corbusier was struck by modernist features in Ottoman architecture. So he was very much impressed by the way they formed their geometric composition. So here, Le Corbusier was immersed by the Ottoman shore mansion that he drew on his trip from Greece to Istanbul. So this is that that sketch which he was impressed with the shore mansion, and he was also particularly inspired by the geometric volumes of Ottoman wooden mansions. So they are called as konaks, so which had continuous horizontal rows of windows and projections supported on wooden pilasters. So these features, you can see it's appearing to have influenced in Le Corbusier's own villa. This is his own villa, which have slender pilasters called pilotis and horizontal strips of windows. So as in his Villa Savoy in Poissy, that is France, which was built in 1922. So his modernist architecture sought perfection through universalizing the forms. So here, from modernism to, let us move to postmodernism. Here, the postmodern architects were using ornaments as signifiers. Unlike the minimally decorated international modern style, the postmodern architecture began to make historical cross-references to the past, thereby adding layers of signification to architectural monuments. Modernist architecture, known as the international style, was often devoid of ornament. they reduce to cubical geometric forms dominated by horizontal and vertical lines. So postmodern architects, on the other hand, have aimed to cite certain styles of the past. This is exemplified by several institutions dedicated to arts of Islam. So here, this is John Novell's Institut des Mondes Arabes, is an important institute of Arab art. So the entire facade is made of geometric compartments acting as ornamental surface. So these metal units, like a camera, you can see it here, they open and close to regulate the amount of light entering the building as it shifts throughout the day. So this can be seen a contemporary interpretation of Arabo-Islamic geometric ornament rendered through modern technology and different kind of materiality, what they have used here. They have used the steel, they have used the glass. So all these like modern technology and modern materials. So next, coming to the Barcelona Forum, designed by Herzog and de Meuron in 2004. So here in the Barcelona Forum, an abstract interpretation of Muqarnas is apparent in many ways. The reference to the Muqarnas form is not expressed through its use of architectural ornament, but rather it is interpreted as a series of differently angled surfaces leading up to the dome and to the oculus on the top. So oculus means usually it's a circular opening at the center of a dome. But here it's an abstract form, so you can see an abstract opening at the top. So this recalls the ArcNet walls of the Timurids. So the following modernism, which negotiated the ornament, there is a recent rise in the popularity of surface ornaments that add interest to the increasingly flat surfaces of monumental buildings. So another clear adaptation of Muqarnas form is in the famous Doha Museum of Islamic Art, which was opened in 2008. In this case, the architect was certainly inspired by the Islamic tradition because the building was commissioned by a ruling family of Qatar. So here the architect I.M. Pai has explained that drew inspiration specifically from the Ibn Tulun Mosque in Cairo in designing this building. So here you can see the adaptation of Muqarnas forms, and also you can see the visual axis, how he has created like Taj Mahal. So here I.M. Pai, he is giving a statement, like he is stating like how he was inspired, with what he was inspired, and what was his basic concept, and how he felt while designing this particular building. So this is the statement what he is given. He says that this was one of the most difficult jobs I ever undertook. It seemed to me that I had to grasp the essence of Islamic architecture. So he was not from the background of Islam. So when he got this project, he has to at least sense like what is Islamic architecture. So when he saw Cordoba in Spain, he says that it was not truly representative of the essence I was seeking. It is too lush and colorful. If one could find the heart of Islamic architecture, might it not lie in the desert, severe and simple in its design, where sunshine brings forms to life? I found that I was looking for in the mosque of Ahmad ibn Tulun in Cairo, its small ablutions fountain, slightly a later edition, is an almost cubic expression of geometric progression from the octagon to the square and the circle. So here you can see the mosque of Ibn Tulun, where he got inspiration from. So he got inspiration from this particular ablution center at the center of the courtyard. So he saw this composition of geometrical forms. So he saw this cube, the rectangles, the Muqarnas, and then the octagons, what they have in this muqarnas, and then the curves in these domes. So this composition, he got inspiration and he tried to abstract that in this Doha Museum. So what he says is, I have allowed myself a subjective decision which was based on my feeling that Islamic architecture often comes to life in an explosion of decorative elements. The decorative art of Islam, the complexity of the geometries are absolutely superb, he says. And I felt I was coming closer to the essence of Islamic architecture, where sunlight brings the powerful volumes and geometry plays an important role. So with this inspiration, he whatever he felt like he got that inspiration from this, and he created this kind of modern abstract form. So rather than employing more typical Arab building materials like stone or brick, Ayampai used the white marble, which was likely inspired by the Taj Mahal. This evident inspiration is also suggested by the museum's siting along the edge of the waterfront and the tree-lined exit avenue by which it is accessed from the land. Materiality, as we have seen, is very important. It's not just a matter of adopting a plan or a form like muqarnas and reinterpreting it in a contemporary idiom, but also of what materials are used. So he says that material is also very important. It's not only the form or the design or the patterns or the elements of Islamic architecture, but also material also influences. So here you can see the interiors of this museum, which is completely geometricized. The essence of Islamic architecture was, according to Ayampai, its purest geometric character. This is not only expressed through the spatial and structural form of museum, which is based on the cube and circle, but also throughout the purely geometric interior decorations that excludes vegetal and floral motifs. So here you can see the launch wherein the central water fountain, which is abstract form of Islamic fountains. And then you can see there is a sea here. This part looks like somewhat it's flowing on the water. So here we will come to this Abu Dhabi Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque, which was inaugurated in 2007. There are many numerous architectural cross-references at this work of Sheikh Zayed in this mosque. The influence of Taj Mahal is once again evident in the use of white marble, as well as you can see the Peter Dura marble inlays dominated by floral motifs, unlike the geometric ornaments of the Museum of Islamic Art in Doha. So these Peter Dura ornaments are curiously juxtaposed with Iznik style ceramic tiles, panels decorated with naturalistic Ottoman flowers. So in this mosque interior, a reference is made to Spanish horseshoe arches. So here you can see these are the Spanish horseshoe arches and intersecting arches that support the three domes as in the Umayyad Great Mosque in Cordoba. So the plan of the Abu Dhabi Mosque itself comes close to Ottoman models here, with its domical courtyard, arcades punctuated by four corner minarets. The enormous chandeliers, what you see here inside, were imported from Venice. Hence, the building is international in its quotation from diverse traditions. So here you can see the Iznik tiles and also from the Ottoman and also the Mughal Peter Dura inlays. So both the mix they had used here. The capitals of the columns have gilded local palm tree forms, Ottoman and Mughal floral ornaments in different techniques, that is Peter Dura and ceramic tile panels. They appear side by eclectic fashion. So interestingly, this mosque does not use stereotyped geometric ornaments, often assumed to be the essence of medieval Islamic architecture, preferring instead semi-naturalistic floral designs of the early modern Ottoman and Mughal idioms. The architects apparently saw a resonance between these two floral styles of ornament, which are accompanied by Art Nouveau-like floral designs on the courtyard floors and also on the vestibule walls. So here, more recently, a new development zone outside the city of Abu Dhabi shows many formal resonances with Abbasid forms such as the round city of Baghdad. So also there is a striking similarity between the new sprawling suburbs formed close to the capital city of Abu Dhabi and Baghdad's relation to Samarra. This search for an Arab origin harkens back to Orientalism. So here, John Nouvel's Louvre Abu Dhabi Museum is sited at the tip of the peninsula. So here, this is the museum. The museum jets into the sea and was conceptualized as a floating island. It opened in 2017 and is said to have been inspired by low-lying homes in the region. 55 detached buildings and 23 gallery spaces are connected by promenades overlooking the sea. It is described as a museum city. So this Arab museum city concept is suggested by the creators of the buildings, who state that visitors should feel as if they are walking through the narrow streets of Arabian Medina. So it is described as a desert oasis entirely surrounded by water. And it has a metallic dome, which has geometric patterns like the building, which was again designed by Jean Nouvel in Paris. So this has 8,000 metal stars that create a moving rain of light. So you can see that creation like a moving rain of light here. The interior space extensively employs glass and mirrors to create decorative effects of light. The museum has loans from 13 different French museums. So it is the first museum in the Middle East to have a collection spanning from the ancient period to contemporary times. So this makes it a universal museum. So the interior creates light and color effects that change constantly with the day. The building, as is the case with many modern museums, competes with the artwork. It becomes unclear whether it is the museum or the artwork that should be admired. So this is particularly tricky when considering the exhibited works of Islamic art, because usually the art of Islamic, they are very small and intimate objects. So here one of the works on display was made for the Museum of Famous Artist Ai Weiwei. So this is a spiral minaret of Samarra, seems to be referenced by this artwork, which again alludes to light symbolism by using crystals, light and mirrors. So here is an example of Qatar National Library that is in Doha. The architects are OMA architects. This is a mixture of modernist and futurism. The building have a very odd and unexpected form, and it appears to sit delicately on the ground, balancing on these points. The architect had a vision of public library to the old concept of what a public square used to be. So here, it is just a flat square when you look from the above. Instead of extruding simply upwards to give it volume like any other cube-like building, they decided to only lift one edge. So here you can see they have lifted only one edge and the opposite two corners of the square. So beneath the two lifted corners, they placed the entries. So this was the entry, one of the entry. On the other side, they have one more entry. So the design decision gives the building its diamond shape, which can be perceived from the outside. So this also one of the mosque in Qatar in Education City. So this library is also in Education City, that is Qatar Foundation. So this also in the same Education City in Qatar Foundation. The first mosque of the Universal Campus at Qatar Foundation, designed by Manguera Vars Architects, London. They are from London and Barcelona. So Manguera Vars architectural philosophy was architecture as landscape, a spiritual place combining modernity and heritage and originality. So here, the mosque's exterior elevation is covered with embossed verses from the Quran, whereas hundreds of small round windows perforate the fluid white cavernous structure, representing the 5 pillars of Islam. The mosque rests on 5 main structural columns. 4 streams of water flow from the surrounding gardens into the building, each representing wine, milk, honey, and water. The mosque is the first truly modern structure for worshippers in the region. So here you can see the model of the entire building. So basically this building is not only meant for the mosque, but also they have many multifunctional activities over here. So they have the education building also here for art, Islamic art and architecture, something like that. So one of the things the architect wanted to do was to create a very contemporary building in order to illustrate that Islam is compatible with modernity and to reflect this in the building's identity. So this is also one more view of the exterior of this mosque. So here the architects have given a statement about what they wanted. So what they say is, we wanted to ensure we draw in people who have a more traditional outlook. And the way we set about doing that was to use Islamic calligraphy and different verses from the Quran, which is integrated into fabric of the building. The idea is to enable people to associate modernity with these verses and the architecture, to understand that this is a contemporary building, but it has at its heart a message, which is at the heart of Islamic tradition. So the architect says, I felt it would be inspiring to do a project which is related to faith, but to do something different with it. So here you can see the prayer hall, female prayer hall in an upper level. And then through these perforations, you can see the lower level male prayer halls. And this is one more example that is National Museum of Qatar by French architect John Nouvel. The museum's architecture and structure symbolize the mysteries of the deserts, concretions and crystallizations, suggesting the interlocking pattern of the blade-like petals of the desert rose. So here, when you come closer to the building, you can see there are so many voids which are created over here. You can see one void over here, one void, and one more void through which we are looking here. So here we can abstract this and compare the Ivans. So Ivans, the purpose of Ivans was it was controlling the climate and also giving shade. It was like an entry access, and it was like where you can get shade and something like that. So the same thing we can abstract this even here. So this can be called something like an Ivan, and below this you have the circulation, movement places, and then entries. So here the architect John Nouvel, he describes what was his concept and how he designed and what he wanted and all. So the text description provided by architect states the building design is inspired by a mineral formation commonly found in the deserts of a Gulf region. The desert rose is a rock formed when minerals crystallize in the crumbly soil just below the surface of a shallow salt basin. The system of interlocking discs surrounding the historic palace like a necklace looks as if it's been propagated organically. It incorporates exhibition spaces that fan out in an elliptical circuit around a central court. The house means where outdoor cultural events will be staged. The desert rose form evokes the culture and climate of Qatar. It emerges from the ground and merges with it. The shadows created by overhanging elements allow visitors to stroll around outside at the same time as protecting the interior from light and heat. The sand-colored concrete cladding is in harmony with the local environment. So here he is stating like how he designed, what was his main concept, and the design itself he is talking, and then how he regulates the climate, how he controls the climate, and how he is giving importance to the local culture and also local environment. So here you can see the front view of the museum here. So coming to the interiors here, it is a home to the traditional geological and archaeological artifacts. And here you can observe that none of the walls are straight, except for the floor, the walls, the ceilings, everything, it's like slanted. So as you move in, you will feel like the visitors, when they move inside, they feel like they are going inside the desert and the sea, because they have given a lot of many walls, which these kind of huge posters, and we can feel that desert while walking. So this emblematic monument, built with the most contemporary construction tools, steel, glass, and fiber concrete, will communicate through high definition cinema, incorporating visitors' movement into its museography. This museum is a modern day caravanserai. So they relate this to a caravanserai. So this is one more example for neoclassical architecture here. This is called Pearl Katara. This is also in Qatar, and here this is it's a mixed use. Like they have a lot of shopping complexes, shopping malls, and also they have many villas and many different types of multifunctional activities are happening. This is a artificial man-made island actually. So here you can see a lot of elements what they are using here. They are like neoclassical architecture, relating neoclassical architecture. So with all these examples, we have understood the revivalism, we have understood what is eclecticism, and then what is neoclassical architecture, and then we understood the modern, contemporary, and also postmodern kind of architecture, how it was influenced in Islamic architecture. So as a concluding remarks, what should be emphasized without aiming to criticize the creative interpretations of the architects of these contemporary museums is that studying Islamic architecture from a historical perspective in this short-term course has revealed that there is no single essence of this vast and multifaceted tradition. This is what we have hoped to communicate throughout our sessions, spanning centuries and continents, which have highlighted the diversity and pluralism of Islamic traditions of architecture. So here I would like to again tell that we have just touched the tip of the iceberg, like there is an entire ocean still. So if you want to learn Islamic architecture more, you have to dig in more. And this is just very few monuments, very important monuments we have taken. But there is it cannot be finished just in 10 days. So it's a vast subject, and you need to dig in more and even learn more in this Islamic architecture. So here will be our last assignment. This is the you all have to make a PPT a small PPT presentation where you will be doing a case study on contemporary mosques designed by architect Zaha Hadid. So architect Zaha Hadid, she's a famous Iraq-based architect. She's a world-famous architect, and she has built many contemporary buildings, not only mosques, but many buildings all over the world. So you can select only the mosques, and then you can just represent that as a case study. So thank you for your attention for the entire course, and any suggestions and comments, you can email me anytime, and stay safe and stay healthy. So now I would like to hand over the mic to Dr. Bhujan.
So thanks a lot. And if there are any questions, then please ask now. Okay, I'm not able to scan here any.
Dr. Bhujan, can anybody summarize quickly? Maybe Nazreen ma'am can summarize quickly. The features of starting from the original, the Umayyads to Abbasids to the key features, like 5 minutes kind of thing, to summarize the key features from the first to the medieval to the late medieval and modernist. It's beautiful. I enjoyed this whole course. But if somebody can just summarize.
Yes, tomorrow, the last session will be also there. But till then, if anyone, then please, most welcome.
Yeah, tomorrow we have a last session, and yes. One of our senior faculty, Dr. Luai, he was our ex-HOD, and he's also a famous architect here in Middle East, and he has constructed many buildings in Islamic architectural style, and also in contemporary styles. So tomorrow's session we will have, and we will also discuss about the question what you have told, right from the first Umayyad to until now, until the contemporary, in a short form. We will just tell about this. But if anybody else also want to put some points,
Madam,
yes.
Madam, I want to ask: is there any pattern kind of thing in architecture? Like when people are copying from one to another, is there any some legal aspects of that?
Because there is no legal aspect. It is your your choice. You want to just copy paste it, or you want to create by yourself. Creativity is in your hand, right?
My question is about the trademark and the I'm.
So there is no rules. There is no rules and regulations.
I'm also lawyer. Yeah. Trademark and your these patents are there where we capture the our creativity, and people patent it. So there is no such concept in architecture. No architect can sue another one that you have copied my creativity, or I had mastered this and someone has copied it and published it, or has shared it somewhere and bought.
Usually, when you are designing something, if you copy, that is influence from someone. It's not like exactly you will copy paste the same kind of building. So you're getting influenced by some of the forms or some of the elements. You can use them. So you can use it as your concept also. So that's not a problem. There is no set of rules and regulations where they say that you should not make Islamic architecture. You should not use Islamic architecture in the contemporary style, or you should not use Roman style in Islamic. So it is the whole Islamic architecture itself. If you see, they have adopted that particular region's architecture styles, and also they have adopted the locally available materials, local styles. They have adopted. So that is called as adaptation. It's not like copying.
If I can come in, I can just talk about the legal aspect of these things also, because I'm not saying just for the sake of saying, because I'm also a lawyer by profession. So I'm just mentioning it. Yes. Copyright copyright thing comes in only when you are copying the thing exactly, or you are copying the idea. These are two things. And secondly, that comes about uniqueness of the creativity. like somebody tries to copy Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal, as such, if you copy somewhere for certain like your presentations or something, there is no legal aspect to it. But yes, if you try to create some other Taj Mahal of the same thing and same kind of material, same kind of reflections and everything, then definitely the problem comes in, and the government of India, like, you know, that will try to intervene. But yeah, if you choose selectively, because nobody can patent the art like the Petrodura, or to say like, you know, canvassing into the marbles. So nobody can canvas or to say the copy the same concept as such. They can simply only take the ideas of, like, you know, segregated places, because Petrodura is not again like exclusively to Taj Mahal, or to say floral Petrodura to Taj Mahal. It is widely distributed. So that doesn't come. But yeah, again, using the symbol for trademarking certain thing, like some architect tries to take Taj Mahal as his logo, as his hallmark, then obviously the legal issues will come up. So these things go like that. I mean, Anwar sir, if I could make some sense to you. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
I just had one question for Nazreen ma'am. It was fantastic what you showed in Abu Dhabi and Qatar, and it has really created a desire in me to go to these places and see these beautiful structures. How come you have not shown any in Oman itself?
We do that. So definitely whatever Dr. Luai is going to show, they are all from Oman. So basically he'll be showing the residential projects and some masjids what he had designed here, also constructed. So you can see that tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So, okay, thanks a lot. And now here is no any question there in chat box. So as we already requested to all of you, tomorrow will be our last session and we will conclude it there. And then one more session we will record and send for the kind information of all of you. So thanks a lot to all. And now with the kind permission of all, now we'll stop here. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Can you patent a building? The answer is a resounding yes. Building designs are protectable by both utility patents